Well, I was kind of rude earlier. I didn't introduce you to everybody. So you might see Cash and Prince, the buckskin and the black horse behind me. And you might have heard in the background this little guy. This is Snippy the goat. So I just wanted to introduce some more of our critters to you here. And once again, we're going to be talking about humility. So we're kind of in humble circumstances right here. And this is in conjunction with the sermon series on the book that I put together called Prison Paradox, and we're on chapter 12 of that book today. And that chapter is entitled The Prison of Pride. So freedom is found in Jesus Christ. That's a consistent theme in the book. And pride is something that the enemy, the devil, Satan, will use to put in our way in an attempt to put us into bondage, all right, apart from the freedom of Christ, or just make us ineffective. Pride is one of those words in the English language. It can be good or it can be bad. If you're someone that says to me, hey, I take pride in my work, I might have you paint my house, do my landscaping, fix my car, because I want someone that takes pride in their work. Now, if you say to me, I'm too proud to do what others ask me to do, to listen to anyone else, then I would say that's bad pride. That is an issue. Now, whenever I preach on something, I always have the opportunity to kind of put myself in check a little bit. How am I doing with the subject? I do that as I encourage and challenge others. Now, before, 12 years ago, in that time frame, when I really welcomed the Holy Spirit to do His work in my life, to lead me in whatever God wanted me to do, I struggled some with pride. I gave a lot of thought as to what others thought of me. I wanted to look successful, and probably the worst thing, thinking back, is I wanted to hide all my imperfections. I wanted to cover up my mistakes. I wanted to pretend like they didn't even exist. And that relates directly to the kind of pride we're going to be talking about here today. Carrying oneself like you got it all together. I believe I'm in remission. I pretty steadily admit my weaknesses. I might as well. People see them anyway. God knows about them. And I do that, and I lean on God's strength to help me in the areas in which I need His help. And I'll tell you right now, I'm forgetful. I stink at anything that takes a lot of concentration. So most card games and stuff are out for me. I'm a lousy city driver. People make angry motions at me every time I drive in the city. My wife behind the camera is emphatically shaking her head yes. So I have many weaknesses, and I need God to help me with those. I need Him to keep me on track daily. And oftentimes it's through others. Some of you are the people that God uses to help keep me in check. But don't get me wrong. Pride can certainly rear its ugly head in my life and become an obstacle. If I let it, it could become a full-blown prison. Something I'm trapped in, something I'm contained by. Now, why do I say that? Why do I say that we can get trapped in pride? Well, remember the call to worship that we had from Philippians verse 2. It says things so well and calls us to follow Christ's example. And He was utterly humble. He was and is God, and yet He emptied Himself and once again came into this world, born in a location or in a situation not unlike the one we have here with critters around, not in a hospital bed or in a palace like one would have thought a king would have been born to. So Jesus humbled Himself and did the greatest act of servanthood this world has ever known. He did that on the cross. So Philippians 2 called us to have that same mind. And so if we fill ourselves with that same mind, that same spirit of Jesus Christ, guess what? That means that a humble nature is going to ooze out of us. Now, specifically, when pride becomes a problem is when it turns into pridefulness. That's the big issue. And it's not really that hard to follow when you combine those two thoughts, those things I was just talking about. Because if we're going to be full of Christ, His Spirit, which is humble, that means we can't be full of pride, right? You can be prideful, you can be godly, you can have the Spirit of Christ, but you can't have both at the same time. The great Christian thinker, C.S. Lewis, put it this way: for pride is a spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love or contentment or even common sense. So, how do we know? What would reveal to us whether we might be suffering with this cancer? Whether we needed to be treated with some humility from the Spirit, hopefully by choice, or otherwise God has His ways to humble us, right? We found that out in our lives. I did find an interesting test that I'd like to share with you, and I found this on the website Guarding the Heart. And it's a list of 10 questions, and what it wants us to do is for every question, if you can say, yep, that's me, just put a check mark. So keep track in your head if you can. If you've got a disorganized mind like me, maybe quickly, if you can, grab a sheet of paper. So here are the 10 questions. Number 1, do you long for attention? In other words, will you do almost whatever it takes to get attention? Be dramatic, be needy, desperate, pushy, demanding, all to get attention. That's you. Put a check, mentally or on a piece of paper. 2, do you become jealous or critical of people who succeed? That was me. I got nervous when other people succeeded as if that was a detriment to me somehow. I used to be that way. So are you negative when people succeed? Maybe when somebody gets parole and you don't think they should, or whatever the case might be, gets a job promotion and you don't think that should have happened? Do you think, have that feeling in mind that, hey, I'm better than them, I don't care what they accomplish? Well, that could be some pride that needs to be worked out right there. So give yourself a check if that's you. Oh man, this test is being hard on me. Number 3, do you always have to win? I'm working on it, all right? Number 4, do you have a pattern of lying? So this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where I would do almost anything to cover up my mistakes, cover up my shortcomings and those areas where I was just weak and still am. Is that you? Will you lie to make people think that you've got it all together? That's you. Check that off. Number 5, do you have a hard time acknowledging that you were wrong? So do you blame shift? Do you argue? Do you defend yourself no matter what? Number 6, do you have a lot of conflicts with other people? There is such a thing as righteous anger. Jesus showed that when he threw out the money changers in the temple, right? But that's a rare thing. If you find yourself arguing a lot with other people, maybe even in the church, that can be an issue. Check that one off if that's you. Ooh, number 7, do you cut in line or in a lane? So either driving or just in the line, the lunch line, huh? In the med line. Do you do that? Do I cut in the lane? Sometimes I do, and watch that. Give yourself a check. Do you get upset when people do not honor your achievements? I didn't get a card. Why didn't I get a card? Are we willing to wait and be acknowledged by Jesus when it's all said and done and not worry about those type of things? If that's you, check it off. Number 9, Do you tend to have more of an attitude of entitlement or thankfulness? So if you feel entitled, it's another sign that you might have some pride that needs to be taken care of there, brother. Number 10, do you honestly feel you are basically a good person, which that's not that bad, but this last part, and superior to others? Do you feel that you've got it figured out and everybody else is just kind of stupid, right? That's you, check it off. So here's the scoring. It's real simple. If you scored 1 to 10, you have some pride that you probably need to deal with starting tonight or whenever you might be watching this. If you scored a 0, you got a lot of pride that needs to be dealt with because that shouldn't happen. You see, humility, it takes maintenance. Pride is something that leaps quite naturally out of our sin nature and easily comes out of us. And there are tons of verses in the Old and New Testament about pride. Probably the most famous of which is Proverbs 16:18, which I'd like to read for you now. It says this: "Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." Now, we would use that one years ago when I did construction. We would use that one a lot on the job site. Let's say somebody was raking concrete, right? And doing a good job at it, and he'd say something like, "I am getting really good at raking concrete. Really good. In fact, I might be the best." And he'd say something like that, and I might say to him, or maybe somebody would say to me, "Let me stand back a little. That way when you fall, you won't mean to knock me over as well." Pride comes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Now, the word in the original Hebrew, the language that the Old Testament was originally in, that's translated as pride, is definitely the haughty or arrogant type pride. So pridefulness. And that's the type of pride that says, "Hey, I can handle anything that comes my way. If a grizzly bear walks in that door there, I'll wrestle him with my bare hands. I can do it." Now, if we have that attitude, we can be guaranteed that a fall will come of some sort. In this life or maybe in the next, but it will come. So, arrogant pridefulness, it makes a statement of self-reliance. But what happens in that day or that season of a person's life when their self-reliance is shattered? Maybe when a virus hits the world and shuts things down. Maybe when you were charged with a felony and put in the back of a police car. That can be very humbling. What happens when things are spiraling out of control and you have said all your life that you can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps? What if the only person you knew to cry out to when things got really bad was yourself? It's not going to cut it, is it? That's a problem. And I don't envy those that carry themselves in that manner. You know, David in the Psalms wrote about such individuals. In Psalm 10, he said this. I'm going to read verses 2 through 4. "In arrogance the wicked hotly pursue the poor. Let them be caught in the schemes that they have devised. For the wicked boasts of the desires of his soul, and the one greedy for gain curses and renounces the Lord. In the pride of his face the wicked does not seek him. All his thoughts are, there is no God."